So I was talking to somebody the other day and they were admiring the Tee-ack reel-to-reel that I have. And they said, well, how do you put a tape onto that? And I thought a minute and I said, well, I will show you how, because this is something, I don't know if it's a skill, but it's something that I learned many years ago in the 1970s. This deck is from the 1980s. And I said, well, let me go ahead and put together a video to show you. Now, I can't do it standing in front of the unit, but what I'm going to do is stand to the side and I'm going to get some close-ups so that you can see what I'm doing. But before I do that, I'm going to talk about some of the functional pieces. So you've got a reel on this side. This is the supply side reel. This is the take-up reel. The tape is going to follow a path under here, and I'll show you in a minute what's under there. There are heads under here that the tape will cross over, and when it crosses over those tape heads, the tape heads will either be in a mode where they will read what is on the tape, they will listen to the tape, if you will, or they will record, they will put an impression on the tape. So supply side, take up side, the path is going to go under here and onto this tape reel. Now, there are some components here. There is a pinch roller on this side and a pinch roller on this side. They both go up at the same time. There are two capstans that these pinch up against, and they pinch the tape against the capstan so that the tape speed will be governed by a capstan mechanism rather than how much tape is actually wound up on the reel, because if you didn't have a capstan, as you were reeling the tape, it would go faster. So there would be a tape speed differential. This way, the tape is always at the same speed, whatever that's been selected to be. Now, there are two idlers that hold the tape sort of in place, and then there are these two levers which govern whether the tape system is actually running. So when this is engaged, the motor that turns the capstan is turned on. Now, the whole purpose of that is when the tape has run out, these will then drop down and shut off. So the next thing I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you up underneath so you can see what the heads look like, and then what I'm going to do is do a sideways shoot of this so that you can actually see the threading of the tape, and I'm going to do it from this side here. So that's a pretty good view of the tape heads, and you'll notice you've got one tape head that's over here, and then you've got one here, and you've got one there, and then you've got one over here. So what you have is you have a series of tape heads that are used for different things. You've got a record and a playback head, and a record and a playback head. Well, why would you have four? Well, because this is an auto reverse deck. This plays and records in two different directions. So when the tape is going this way, there's a record head and a play head. The play head is used to listen to what has just been recorded so that you can monitor what's being recorded. And if the tape is going in that direction, the reverse is true. This tape head here records as this tape head over here listens. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at how you thread this deck, and then we'll look at how it plays. Okay, so you can see the take-up reel, and I think that you can see these pretty well. So what we're going to do is we're going to thread up underneath this arm, and we're going to go over this, and I'll do a detail on the left-hand side because there are some things that are going on there you'll need to understand. And then we're going to bring it up and around. And then when it comes up and around, we're going to look for this, which is where we actually want to guide the tape in. All right, so that tape is now going to be held there. Now, when you're doing this with, this is a leader tape is very strong. If you don't have a leader, you want to feed a little bit while you're doing this, otherwise you'll break the tape, especially if it's a vintage tape. So now you can see we've gone almost all the way around. I'm holding the tape so it doesn't come out of that hole there. All right, so that's now threaded, but we're going to take a look at a couple of things as well so that you have a clear understanding of where the tape guide is. Now on this side, our tape is going under this arm, which is activating the motor, and the tape is going just over, and you see this little bar here? See that bar? Let me see if I can get any closer. That bar is meant to look for on the back, not the front, not the part of the tape that actually goes over the heads, but on the back of the tape, on the back side of the tape, it's looking for a sensor. And the sensor, when you bought a Maxell tape or a TDK tape, came with these two little aluminum metal tabs. Can you see them? Those tabs are to be placed on the tape, on the back side of the tape. So think about it like this, back side of the tape, so it's coming around this way, and what it does is it makes contact between this wheel and that post. That post is electrically isolated from the chassis and from this wheel that's going. And what happens is that piece of metal, which is stuck to the back of the, see if I can get that focused, that's stuck to the back side of this tape, makes contact. And at the end of this tape, you would put at the end of this tape, what will happen is it will trigger the tape deck to reverse direction. Okay, because it's going to go in one direction and then it would go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to now show you what this looks like when it's playing. So when we talked about the auto reverse happening, I'm going to do this view here where you can see it is changing direction. And then I'm going to get a detail on the other side. Okay, now watch the tape. Watch as it comes through here. Did you see that? I'll probably do a slow motion of that. And here is a view from the underside. And here's another view right where that post is. See how that's working? So we start playing in this direction, and by the time the tape has completely wound through at the other end, remember we talked about having one of these pieces of metal that, and this is sticky on the other side, so it sticks to the back side of the tape. The back side of the tape comes over this post here and contacts the wheel, and what will happen is it will tell it to start playing, if it's in record mode, recording in the opposite direction. And so I'm going to rewind it a little bit until I get to okay. Now that I'm on the leader, you can see the clear leader coming through. I'm going to let it play through so you can see what happens when it's at the end of the tape. See? The tape comes loose. These two arms drop, tensioner arms drop, and when that happens, it shuts off. I'm going to show you one last feature that's peculiar to the TEAC decks. I do have an Akai GX-636 that won't do it the same way, but when the tape is at this end, that is, it's playing through and it's almost at the end, can you make it auto reverse the other direction? Well, you can put a sensing foil on the back, and when it gets over here, it will certainly tell it to reverse. So let's say you're playing the tape, and of course it's going in this direction. It's going to, at the end, see the sensing foil, and it's going to automatically reverse. Well, that's cool. But what happens if you have your setting to continuous auto reverse? That is, you want it to play one direction and then reverse and play in the other direction. Well, you could put a sensing foil on this end of the tape if you wanted to, but these decks actually rely on the tape counter. So when the tape counter goes to 0, it will automatically reverse direction. So if you notice that, it's not using a sensing foil on the tape on this side at the beginning. Instead, I had zeroed the counter, and as soon as the counter goes beyond 0 to negative, it immediately goes ahead and reverses. Now, that's specific to the TEAC decks. In this particular deck, and I'll zoom in on it and give you a detail. This deck has the full auto reverse feature, and that's why it will work. So I'll give you that, and that's on the inset here, so you can see that little knob does the job. So we're going to do a normal threading session. This is as if I am not being photographed or videoed, just so that I can show you how I would normally do this. And I could drop the tape, that happens a lot, especially when you're trying to do first thread on these. Yep, that's okay, that happens. What you got to be careful of too is, even though I'm using leader, tape leader is much stronger than tape itself is. So if you don't have a leader on the tape, then don't try to pull through like this. Don't try to do that if you don't have a leader, because you'll break the tape, especially some of the vintage tapes. because they're old and brittle. What I normally do is, if I have a vintage tape, I'll go ahead and put a decent leader on, I'll splice a leader onto it anyway. So now that I've got a leader on it, now I can go ahead and let that play through. And as I had indicated before, I've got this little knob set to continuous play. I'm zeroing it out. So what will happen is, I'm putting a little bit of tape on that reel. If I'm going in the opposite direction on the Tee-ack, then once it gets to 0, basically it's tripping over to 9999, it will go ahead and automatically reverse. Like this. Notice this was not using any kind of sensing foil. That's the last of this video. I hope this has been informative to you, and I hope that if you have one of these decks that you take care of it and that you enjoy it for the rest of its life. Thanks for watching.